Welcome back to Remake or Rebreak. On this episode of the show, we're going to be looking at Final Fantasy VI compared to its definitive version, Final Fantasy VI for mobile phones, released in 2014. By golly gee, this version has so many important changes that it's hard to believe that anyone prefers the original. In the last episode, we talked about Final Fantasy VI for the GBA. While that was the best revision of the game yet, since it had the most stuff and made the game much prettier, the best was still yet to come. Takashi Tokita revealed in late 2013 that Final Fantasy VI would be receiving the greatest version of the game that anyone had ever seen. And yes, that is how his name is pronounced. I am doing my best to pronounce it correctly, trust me. In spite of this announcement, and the enhanced and redone sprites by returning sprite artist Kazuko Shibuya, fans weren't happy with this version of Final Fantasy VI due to intense nostalgia blindness. Leave it to gamers to pretend that their favorite games are immune to being upgraded and won't ever age poorly. But I'm here to reappraise the mobile version of Final Fantasy VI and set in stone the truth behind it, whether the world is ready for it or not. Let's begin by looking at the changes to the story to start off. The plot of Final Fantasy VI is largely unaltered in this version, which is wonderful because the original plot of that game is still masterful to this day. Not just one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo, but one of my favorite games of all time. However, the new sprite work adds so much to the narrative, the characters' expressions bring out so much more emotion than before, and the extra content from the GBA version, along with Tom Slattery's translation done for that version, adds so much texture to the world and characters. The Soul Shroud in particular, as I went over in the GBA version, adds a lot of moral depth to the characters. That they have to confront the ghosts of every monster they've ever killed really makes you feel for those monsters and elevates this game's ideas beyond that of the average JRPG because this one is about the characters. That being said, there isn't really much else differentiation between this version's story and the originals. It is, however, a much better variation on the idea. The way I captured the footage for this video was simple. I emulated Final Fantasy VI on SNES with a smoothing filter to do my best to improve how its outdated graphics looked, and as for the 2014 mobile port, I unfortunately had to pirate it because the conspirators at Square Enix are colluding to make my life miserable. They live in my walls. They live in my walls. Someone get them out. Another bonus of Final Fantasy VI 2014's presentation is that you can crank it all the way up to 61 FPS instead of the original's measly 60. The only cons I can think to mention about the graphics are that they only look marginally better than the original when it's smooth. However, since not everyone will have access to emulators that can make their 2D sprite-based games look so modern, I can't complain too much. The core gameplay has been changed in a few minor ways that make it much better. For one, the party member you have in front will gain an exclamation point above their head whenever there's something to be interacted with. This is great for finding invisible hidden items, something that some players MHMOO or might have missed out on. The idea that a player might miss something in a video game is the worst possible thing that could ever happen, so I'm glad that Tokita and his team made this change, and it's one that's so prevalent within these excellent Final Fantasy re-releases. Another commendable choice that reduces LIPF, or latent intense player frustration, is the addition of objectives at the top of the screen that tell you exactly where to go and what to do at any given point in the narrative. This is so incredible because it increases AOTIGWPIDTTAITTPANW, or amount of time in game where players doing things that are important to the plot and not wandering. In a JRPG with a back half about exploring the world, this was something that definitely needed. It's much more intuitive design than having to figure out where to go on your own and actually explore the world. Other than that, there are no major gameplay fixes, except an amazingly improved UI. I have to hand it to the team who worked on this, whoever they are. They did a really good job before being forgotten by time. Alright, we've properly seen everything about the FF6 2014 mobile version. The improvements to graphics and gameplay are self-explanatory. There's only one question left to answer. Is it a rebreak, reprise, remaster, remake, replace, or a romance, which is the highest tier of remake or rebreak, in which a remake is so good that I want to have children with it? Final Fantasy VI Mobile definitely falls into the category of replace for me, because there's nothing on this earth that I love more than my Senkai Kasa. This remake is a definitive upgrade over the original, one that everyone should play to forego the ugly graphics and clunky gameplay of the original. You couldn't even move in 8 directions in the original. It's an improvement much like the Twin Snakes improvement on how Solid Snake controls in Metal Gear Solid. By golly gee, how did anyone play that game? However, with this new ruling of Final Fantasy VI Mobile in mind, I have to retroactively alter a previous video's ruling and say that I don't think DMC Devil May Cry is a replace of a remake when it comes to the original Devil May Cry anymore. I know this doesn't matter to the rest of the video, but I promise it's important for me to say. I was overzealous at the time and didn't truly consider that most people who want to play Devil May Cry wouldn't be able to appreciate the Shakespearean tragedy DMC Devil May Cry offers. With that, we are nearing the end of the series on Final Fantasy Fantasy VI. However, we're full steam ahead onto the final version, the Pixel Remaster, which is a massive downgrade from this in every way. Consider subscribing to the channel to make sure you don't miss the inevitable epic video. And while you're here, make sure to check out the Archagent Everlasting podcast, which doesn't exist. I've definitely never tried anything like that before. Until then, I'm Archagent Everlasting, and I'll see you all next time.